Hi, guys. It's Kerri Pomarolli, and you're listening to the Balaker podcast.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Balaker podcast. I think you'll definitely enjoy today's guest because she is crushing clean comedy. She was a favorite at Ball Games Laugh Lounge at Red Rock. She has 2 books on the Amazon bestseller list. She's been all over network television, and she's a fellow Halloween baby. Please welcome the wonderful, the fabulous, the super talented Kerri Pomarolli. How are you, Kerri?
So can I call you Maddie still? Or
please do. I'm over 40 now, so I think it's appropriate to be called Maddie. Yeah. When I was, in my 20s, it didn't make as much sense. But now that I'm officially middle-aged, yes, let's go with Maddie.
Congratulations on the podcast. I've been tuning in a little bit. I saw when you started it through the magic of Facebook. So it's very exciting for you.
It is, and it shows how hip I am, Kerri, where I promote things on Facebook. So
my MySpace was closed off. I would have caught you there.
I'm huge on Friendster, so please follow us there.
We both are, Maddie. That's probably how we met. So yes, it's awesome.
The Southeast is well represented today. You're in Georgia. Where did you grow up, Kerri?
I'm a Detroit girl. I'm a big loudmouth Italian, like your producer, from Detroit. But my mother's from Alabama, and they moved to Georgia. So the past 20 years from LA? 20 years have been going back home to Georgia. So I spend a lot of time in the South, and I have a Southern mother. So, she tries hard to instill those values in me. They don't work, but she tries.
You have Southern values, Michigan values, and then you have Los Angeles values to help erase anything good you learned.
I'm getting out of LA, bro. Like I'm following you. I'm following the trail out of Sodom and Gomorrah. But yeah, I'm a Detroit girl. I would say that's my real identity.
Yeah, in fact, you're a Michigan grad, correct?
Yes, go blue, baby, go blue. Tom Brady.
You and I have a lot in common. One is neither one of us will be professional dancers, but mine was due to a lack of coordination. But you had a legitimate chance. What happened?
I mean, well, the people that wrote my bio wrote that. But when I was 11, I failed the scoliosis test that all the kids get in 6th grade, where you have to, I hate to say bend over on a podcast, but, your doctor says bend over. Yeah. I failed the spine test, and then I ended up having to get spinal surgery. So in my mind, I was super close to being a professional ballerina because I was dancing like 6 days a week. I don't know if that's how really it went down, but for the purposes of my bio, that's how we're going to play it. But I was dancing a lot, but it did kind of parlay me into acting, which was parlay me into comedy. So I guess there's always a plan.
Yeah. So congratulations on failing your scoliosis midterm.
I did. Yes.
And how did that propel you into acting?
Okay, Maddie, you're going to understand what this is. There was a thing back in the day called a phone book. Do you remember what a phone book?
I do. I would stand on them to feel tall.
I literally got a phone book and Googled acting and theater and called this theater up at 11 years old and said, I would like to be an actor. And they said, we're casting for this bad seed, like evil, literally like that weekend. We're looking for this little girl who could be like the spawn of Satan, and like shocking. Got the part. But you know how it is. If you have that bug of stage something inside of you, you either love it, you're going to do the M-Bar open mic, and you're going to go and say, I want to do it again, or you want to go home and kill yourself. So I just had the bug from a very young age to perform. And so started at childhood.
Yeah. What were some of your first performances?
Well, that first show was the Children's Hour. I was Caterpillar number 7 in Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, good gig.
It was a good, it was good. I wasn't blonde enough to be Alice, but later when I moved to LA, I fixed that situation. You learn lessons early in life when the director literally looks at me and goes, well, we cast the blonde. And I was like, well, that's the story of my whole career. So I did musical theater, and I majored in musical theater at University of Michigan. And I did West Side Story before it was racist to have white kids playing Puerto Ricans. I don't know if that's out anymore. My daughter thinks it's like horrible that I was one of Anita's cohorts. I was like, it was Northville, Michigan. We didn't have a lot of diversity. Okay. Like,
we had to branch out. Yeah. That's real acting.
Yes, it's very real. But I love theater. I think that we both have that in comedy. Like, if you're doing comedy, that's theater in its own, party of one. But I really enjoyed being part of Second City and the Groundlings and all those things where, I don't know about you, I do miss the group dynamic. I toured with Ron, my ex-husband, for a long time, who now is in and out of living in my garage. But that's another episode. You should have him and I on.
A future episode. I want both of you and his perspective, and then yours. That'll be fun.
Now caulking my ceiling. That sounds really bad. But I miss the group dynamic. When you're coming up in comedy, there's a lot of. I miss going to your rooms and hanging out and seeing Eliza Schlesinger live for the first time and like seeing these awesome comics and just that group mentality that when you're on the road now, it's lonely. Now I see you doing group stuff. I see you doing some group stuff in Orange County, and I think I hope to get some more opportunities like that again because I miss it.
Well, if you work really hard, Kerri, I'll hook you up with some opportunities in South Orange County. Just you have my number. Well, okay. We met during my show, and you were a huge favorite. I always loved having you on because you could headline, you could go in the middle, you could host. You're like.
That. I love that show. I love that bar. Remember, I did a show for you on the night Barack Obama became president. It's like weird. I have these weird memories of your show. Like I said, I would see some of my favorite comics at your show live that I'd never seen live before. And that you never knew who was going to pop in on your show. It was just a fun gig. I always loved it.
Comedians would undercut their value every Tuesday, and it was actually 2 Tuesdays a month. But we had,
there was beer.
There was beer. Yeah, there's lots of shenanigans. But in terms of one thing I'm proud of, or the show is the diversity of comedians we had. We had. A young Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, Joe Rogan, but then we also had Kerri Pomarolli, Christina P. And I think it kind of worked. It just showed like if people were funny, the audience didn't really care. But I had never seen you, Kerri, in a quote unquote Christian environment. Like I knew you from my Red Rock show, and you called that your favorite secular show, which I appreciate. But can you share with our audience, like, what was performing at Red Rock like different from, one of your church gigs?
The church people were way more drunk. And so I think that that's important to know. When you slay back with the Catholics after communion and you win. But no, there's a different vibe when you're the headliner at Christ Lutheran Luncheon and they laugh on the inside, and you're just doing the best you can. And I still do a lot of faith-based shows, and I make a living doing that, but there's an adrenaline rush of going up after whoever on your show is awesome. Like that nerves that gets me pumped up. I'm comic number 4. They don't know me. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. They don't care. You have to be funny. It's 11 o'clock at night. Back then I would stay up late for shows like that, but there's an adrenaline rush of going to do your show or the Comedy Union or Laugh Factory. And you have to earn their respect, as opposed to when you're headlining Orange County or San Francisco, wherever I'm going, Ohio. They like me already. Like I walk on stage and I've already won. I just have to earn the next 45 to 60 minutes of their time. And you can't, like Jerry Seinfeld says, they'll give you a minute of grace. But at a show like Red Rock, that's all you're going to get. They're polite, but it's very obvious if they don't like what you're saying. You know what I mean? So that's right. A bigger challenge, and I miss doing it as much as I used to. I think the pandemic, my friend Angela Hoover, who you should have on your show, we're so lazy, like literally so lazy. She's like, do you want to go do Flappers? I was like, no, that's like 40 minutes. I'm not driving 40 minutes, So I think the pandemic has not been good to all of us comics who need to make sure that we keep going out and doing the shorter sets and doing the club sets. You can just get so comfortable in your own skin to where you're like, I don't have to do that, but that's not true. We have to.
You must. And Kerri, you're a member of the most underrepresented group in entertainment, the openly Christian female stand-up. And I'm curious, how does your faith impact your material?
Well, I'm so dirty, and that really helps. Like, I wouldn't say that if I were you. I have a game I like to play with my friends called If I Wasn't a Christian Comedian, I would tell this joke. But no, I just try to be who I am on stage and off stage that my mother would approve. I mean, God forbid. I'm just clean. I just don't, swear. I could still talk about sex. I mean, or the lack thereof, for 8 years. But yeah, so I think, and then when I'm in a church setting, Matt, and I'm doing an inspirational event, 100% I'll share about faith, I'll share about miracles. But the cool thing about being a Christian is that you're a Christian everywhere you go. And so somebody on the back stairs of the Hollywood Improv might be like, my grandma's in the hospital, will you pray? I've had those awesome opportunities, or doing the drag queen bar, on West Hollywood, and the guys being like, oh, I got kicked out of the church. And I'm representing church to them in a way that maybe was the only positive representation they've ever seen, if that makes sense,
Oh yeah. And you performed I remember you were big in gay bars and comedy clubs and churches. What was the most memorable, other than Red Rock, like what,
well, how about the time I was at, so Ron McGee, my boyfriend at the time, this was back in the day, he's a comic, and he got fired from the show we were doing. We were like dating for a while. And he got a fight with the producer, Bone Hampton. Do you remember Bone Hampton?
Oh, yeah, very much so, yeah.
So they got in a fight and he got fired, and it was a big show at the Comedy Union, and I was like stressed out. I was kind of a newish comic, and the producer was like, just go do your act. Just shut up and go do your act, And I was like, oh my gosh, my boyfriend got fired. All my friends are here. And I did this joke about Patrick Swayze, and I said, if I could find a man like Patrick Swayze, he would show Nobody Puts Baby in the Corner. And then the theme from Dirty Dancing starts playing over the loudspeaker. I'm like, the DJ's messing with me. And then Ron McGee comes on stage and gets down on one knee and asked me to marry him, like on the freaking stage. The whole thing was a setup. The whole crowd goes crazy. They didn't know if it was real. Like, they were like, is this happening? So I just felt sorry for the girl that had to go next.
Yeah, she was like, who's going to propose to me?
Yeah, mic drop. So I don't know how to top that. That's pretty,
I don't think you can. I don't think Will Smith slapped a Chris Rock tops that. Like you're at the apex.
I open my shows now. I'm like, I know you guys are worried about comedy bringing unity, but I'm not Chris Rock, so like just calm down. But I always go, but if you're vaccinated, could you please stand up? I just like to start my shows with unity that way. I'm like, oh, too soon? Oh, wait, too soon? If I was in Orange County, they're like, what's the vaccine? I was like, I know, sorry I brought it up.
Very, very true. None of us are vaccinated. I only have 3.
So like I did my very first show in the pandemic in Newport Beach, California. And it was September of 2020. I'd been like furloughed, just like off. God bless Newport Beach. I mean, I walk in my hazmat suit. I've got like duct tape all around me. And there are all these like Orange County, like Newport women, like, what are you doing? Like, what? We have COVID. What's that? And they're hugging.
Our cigarettes kill the COVID germs. Yeah.
Yeah. Like wearing all white. I was like, this is like Alice in Wonderland. Like, what is happening in this alternate universe? So I did a lot of comedy shows, like I'd go to Idlewild, or I'd go to, far outside of the city, like Texas, other countries, They're like, COVID, we don't have no COVID, no. Okay.
Yeah. So you were in Michigan and then you came to LA. Culturally, what was that like?
My mother was terrified that I would end up in church with Tom Cruise. And then she was sort of excited that I might meet him. But you know what I mean? It's so funny, Matt. You think about your time and you're young and stupid, and you just do everything that you're just young and stupid. Like I lived in New York before I lived in LA, and, being 20 years old in New York City and being like, we should drive to Staten Island. It's only 1:00 in the morning. That's an important, I'm going to go to this club where there's like a transvestite and like people in leather at the door. It's 8 levels. I have a fake ID. Like that's a logical thing. Or like living in LA and working and I love Gen Xers because we're scrappy. You know what I mean? We will survive anything. And I miss those days of working 3 jobs and getting paid $100 at each one of them. And, just being young and dumb and being like, we should drive to Ensenada. That's a great idea. It's Tuesday. So now when I go to do a comedy show in Burbank, I bring Advil, like a pillow. Like, I mean, my kids are like, what's in your bag? I'm like, you don't know what you're going to need. I have snacks. So in a way, it's just funny you miss those days, but we worked hard. I mean, that's one thing that we have in common. Like, if you want to do something, you do it. And, I'm going to sound like a bitter old lady, but it's not just I'm going to be a good editor and put my best 30 seconds online. Like, I have to bring, God bless all the influencers, but I'd love to see them go to Red Rock and do 8 minutes, like even 8, you know what I mean? Or they might do 4, good solid 4, but or headline a club with a 40-minute set. So that's why I just like those early days of LA where it felt grittier than it does now.
And I understand.
I hate gritty. Now I'm like,
it got too gritty for you. Where are you off to next?
I'm going to be moving, actually, premiering on your podcast, This News. I'm going to be moving to Northern Cal, outside of Sacramento, which sounds not sexy, but it's actually really beautiful. There's a town
Folsom.
Yep, Fair Oaks, California. They have chickens that like cross the street, and it's by the Folsom prison. So really, No, here's why I'm moving, Maddie. You remember that SNL skit about millennials or people in their 30s on Zillow real estate at like 1 a.m, and you just start looking at houses and you're like, I could have a pool and a moat and like pigs, and it's all for $400,000. Yes.
That was what Eric was doing 25 minutes ago. So
Eric, join us.
Literally.
Everyone can't go to Texas or Florida. But I'm going to get a moat and like a river of my own, and like it's all going to be for $299. It's going to be great.
That's awesome. So you do a lot of public speaking as well. How would you compare that to stand-up?
It's can I be honest? It's
no, please BS me.
It's so boring, but it pays well. People hear me, I'm going to get in trouble. I tried to be a public speaker. I joined the National Speakers Association. Really, because they make a lot of money. And I went to the convention, and I just felt like I was at band camp, but I didn't play an instrument. Like I was like the comic at like speaker camp, and all roads led back to comedy. Everybody would be like, well, can you just be funny? And, can you just be funny? And so speaker world funny between you and I, not so funny, Maddie, not so funny whatsoever. So it just wasn't my world, but I do prefer to do inspirational speaking when there's like a faith component, because that's my tribe. But I have entertained lunch ladies. I mean, if you pay me like Field of Dreams, I will go, to paraphrase. Have you ever done corporate like speaking stuff like that?
I've done corporate shows, but not inspirational speaking event. Like it's always been booked as a comedian, not like
they asked me to do a teamwork presentation, and I did a whole talk about how the Detroit Pistons had to build their offense around Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls, and they had like the group offense, and they couldn't stop him, and then he got Pippen, and they like were on, and like
they called it the Jordan rules, right?
Yeah, so I did a whole teamwork thing, and I was very proud of myself. But at the end of the day, I'd rather just like tell jokes about being king of the murder capital of the world. But I don't think that's my path. I think it happens very rarely. But I just like to tell. This pandemic made me so grateful to be a comic. I just missed it. And there's no substitute, right? There's just no
Zoom shows are a very poor substitute.
No. Yes. I mean, and you don't know how I've done the Zoom shows, like in my bedroom, lighting on the bed. Like they don't know, do they? I don't know how many podcasts I've done when the speaker was out. I'm like laying on my stomach, like trying to focus in. And they did save me financially, because I do. So my full-time living is comedy or writing, and I had to just pivot. But first time I got a mic back for those crazy Newport ladies, I was so grateful to just have a live audience.
Hey, God bless those crazy Newport ladies. I understand, Kerri, you headlined the California Women's Conference. 20,000 people were there. How do I get that gig?
I know. Well, considering they have to hire you now because it's gender neutral, like you can just say that you identify as a woman comic.
I will for the right amount of money. Yes, I definitely will.
People ask me through the years, are like, how did you feel about being a woman comic? I was like, being a woman comic is great because if you're funny, you are the affirmative action. Like, how many times have I gotten booked because they're like, and not you, I think you booked me because you like me, but I got booked because they're like, we need a girl. Can you just be a girl? Can you just show up? And then if you're funny, that's really fun to like earn the respect of, I remember doing shows on like Bobby Lee from Mad TV and like people that I really liked, and they're cordial to you, but they're not openly super nice until maybe after your set. But I always felt like identifying as a woman is a good move. I highly suggest it, Matt.
Part of the reason I went by Maddie is one, I had a real job for a while. And so there's like no way I could figure it out. But also when I sent my avails into the Melrose Improv, I knew they wanted women more. So I thought it was more like androgynous. Now, when they saw me, it was different, but I figured I worked for Jamie Foxx.
How do you compare your comedy, just comedy life in Orange County? Have you been able to fill your tank with, I know you're doing it.
It's more fun here. The pay is better. It's harder to practice though. There are more set shows and there are more small theaters and there are more people with money who will pay for tickets. Whereas
I always just thought, Maddie's so smart. Why is he doing comedy? Like you were going to like
my wife's wondering the same thing. Yeah.
You were going to like USC business school. Like it makes sense that I was doing comedy. I have a degree in musical theater, which is essentially like waitressing, but you were doing like really hard business classes. And I was like, is this just some cruel joke for his parents to be like, Mom, Dad, I just want to stress you out.
Mom, Dad, you gave me too much support, so I'm going to rebel you by doing the least lucrative thing I can think of.
Ron's family's Asian. They're like, you're dead to us.
Yeah.
But so so your life, you feel like you got the podcast, and I know you're doing shows and you're producing, and do you think that's just the way to go? Is if you kind of make your own path, you have to continue to do that, right?
I think I didn't set out like this. I think you're more clear in some of your goals. I just kind of go with the flow, but the days of waiting for someone to say yes, I mean, you still have to when you're trying to perform at clubs or this or that, but it's so much better when you can create your own stage or create your own avenue. If I was trying to lobby Netflix or someone for a podcast, they would never hire me. But one of the nice things about 2022 is you can kind of just do things on your own, and you still have to find a market, you still have to find an audience, but those gatekeepers, those impediments to what you want to do aren't as much. Now we have to rely on our own skills, and that sucks, but at least the roadblocks aren't as severe as they used to be.
It's like I'll do a highly professionally edited 35, 45-second clip on social media, and it'll get a couple hundred views. And then my kid will eat a cracker and then it's like 5,000.
Do it again. It was Nabisco.
Ruby woke up today and then she said the funniest thing. She was like, hey mom. And then I'm like, I'm on the cover of a magazine and I want a Pulitzer Prize. I'm like, but what did Ruby eat for breakfast? So just like, it pisses me off to the point where I'm just like, old and cranky, and these like Gen Zs try to tell me what to do with my social media strategy. I'm like, I don't need no strategy. They love me in Oklahoma.
Got it all figured out.
I don't know if we do or we don't. Like my friend Bob Smiley is a comedian. I was so excited because I got a check for being on the radio today. It was very exciting.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, well, my Instagram and my TikTok are killing it. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm like, you get paid for being on Instagram? I just post my kid's picture. Like, he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that's another place where I'm failing. I'm not getting paid for being on Instagram, So,
well, you might not be monetizing Instagram, but you've done a lot of cool stuff. So I'm curious, what are some of the accomplishments that you're the most proud of?
I'm super excited that I got a job writing for the Hallmark Channel. Everyone who's listening, your mother or your wife, I wrote 2 movies for Hallmark.
Wow.
And I hope to be writing more. I'm I love writing. So that's always been a joy of mine. I wrote during the pandemic. We just wrote a new television pilot, and like Adam Sandler's company's looking at one of my films. I mean, that means nothing, but it sounds good. That's a
It
true
does.
statement. Like, as of today, Adam Sandler's company's looking at one of my films. But I love writing. I love creating characters. I have a wonderful partner who's good at grammar, so she does all the typing. We've been working together 10 years. So when I'm not doing stand up, I'm writing. I did a podcast with my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, called "This Is Not a Good Idea." And when I can fix my microphone, we're gonna do more. But yeah, so it's just been like kind of a in the pandemic going, oh, how do I survive? But there's these amazing opportunities where you get to go. Just 2 weeks ago, I went to Orange County actually, and 1,000 people showed up. It was a conference, and I was the Friday night speaker, and brought my daughter on at the end of my show, my 10-year-old daughter Ruby, and was talking about her life and how she was really sick as a kid, and now she's not anymore. And they all just jump to their feet when she comes on stage, and I'm done. I mean, I should just leave. They don't care. But like those moments to enjoy with your 10-year-old daughter, and plus the snacks, Maddie. I mean, the snacks are amazing for live shows. So it's a matter of like, I might have taken it for granted, but now I'm like, I have to go to work. I get to go to work.
Yeah.
And I do want you to call, like I do, if you have any shows around the dinner hour at like 4:30 in Orange County, that's I'm in. Like just call me for the supper clubs. But I'm going to Arizona next week, and then I'm going to like Kentucky, and I'm back to doing these crazy shows because I don't have a good tour manager. So I fly into like Detroit and then drive to Kentucky, and then you like drive somewhere else in Kentucky, and like you just do it. Like, you know, people are like, do you really want to do all that? I'm like, yeah, I really, really do. That's they're asking me to go. I'll go.
You're doing all this, Kerri. You have two beautiful children. I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that you've overcome?
Well, money is, you know, apparently you need it to keep them entertained. So I'm a single mom, but I have a really good relationship with their dad, who you know, Ron, and he's been in their lives daily. So he's, you know, for all intents and purposes, the family unit is still intact, but that's work. I think that's work, trying to make my comedy career and his career, and parenting a 14-year-old who has the brain of like a 45-year-old woman, and because she knows everything, Maddie, because she has YouTube. And
Oh yeah.
I'm so sick, I'm so sick of people telling me how smart my daughter is. Like, right, she's so smart. I'm like, stop saying it, because she knows, and her head is already like large.
Yeah, your daughter's brilliant. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, thank you. And she argues with me like a defense attorney who has never lost a case, because she can lie with so much conviction. So, you know, that's 14 is a really, I'm like, when does it get good again? Like, when am I going to like you? But I have another one coming up behind you that I still like a lot. I highly recommend, as you know, having more than one, because you can do the first one up.
And avoid the teen years as much as possible, from what I gather. I
think you just say yes to electro. I have a 14-year-old who doesn't have a phone. She's such a weirdo. She doesn't even want a phone. That's how weird it is.
Is she Amish?
Yeah, she's sort of like living in an Amish paradise. One time we got this gig, and we were in this like cabin. This was Ron and me and the girls. And it was like this really creepy old like Freddy Krueger movie cabin. And Lucy was like, it's like an Amish paradise. I was like, no, this is where we all die. Like this is Friday the 13th. But yeah, so you have snarky kids, and then their mouth is snarky. I don't know why. So they're genetically predispositioned to be total smart Alex, you know.
Oh, big time. They have no other choice.
And I mean, I felt bad for the teachers. I mean, I remember even when they were little, like I'd get a note home, Ruby slapped Mr. Frazier on the butt in the hallway today. And I was like, well, what was he wearing? I mean, is it really her fault? I mean, was he asking for it? Like, you know.
Yeah, what was he wearing? Where do your kids go when you're on tour?
With Dad, and they eat pizza at home at my house. They always are at we have a very, so they don't care. Like, I mean, when I leave, they're like, but I don't tour for a long time. I tour like weekends. Like I'll tour like a Friday Now that they're older, I was talking to a comic friend of mine. I used to always take the 5 a.m. flight home so I could be home by 9:30. Well, now if I'm home by 9:30, they're not up or they're on their iPads. So why did I do that to myself? Like
I don't
now
know.
I'm gonna roll in about noon or 1. Maybe we'll catch a movie together. But yeah, how old are yours?
7 and 9.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, buckle up, buddy. It's I mean,
Well,
it's fun. It's fun. Their mouth is fun and they say funny things. And that's why Lucy and I ended up doing a podcast together, because she's just super, like, we watched Grease, the movie Grease, and she hated it. And I was like, why did you hate it? She goes, well, because if I want a boy to like me, I don't want to wear tight leather pants they had to sew me into and smoke a cigarette. And I was like, well, you need to dance first.
yeah,
It's not like she didn't earn it.
exactly.
But 7 and 9, you have a clear picture of their personalities, right? Like,
Somewhat. And they
well,
get,
maybe they can go to business school and disappoint you one day.
I hope so. I just attending college will be a big disappointment, I think.
Well, we'll just have them do online school because we'll just convince our kids it's cheaper.
Perfect. I hope they start a business that fails and then they start a few more and then they write books about it.
I am all like, listen, learn a trade.
Learn a trade.
Be a beautician. No one cares about your history degree.
No.
She's like, I want to major in history. I'm like, that's equivalent to musical theater. So
Exactly. Well, there's a lot to lament these days, but I think there's way more to be happy about. So, regarding comedy or entertainment, Kerri, what excites you the most about the future of it?
I think people are showing up, Matt. I think people are showing up in droves. Like, a lot of my shows are well attended. I say that humbly. I don't know if it's because of me or they're just like, oh, laugh night. I'm just so happy that people want to be there. Like 1,000 people showing up in Orange County or 500 in Arizona or whatever. I think people want to laugh, and that's what makes me super pumped about the future. And I think after you've been in the business for a long enough time, we've gone through the ebbs and the flows. We've gone through the downtimes. It's not dying. Like, we're not comedy's not dying. I do need Dave Chappelle to keep making Netflix specials, because if they die, we die. Do you know what I mean? Like, those guys need to keep being edgy. The Chris Rocks and the Dave Chappelles. You guys they got to do what they do at that level. If they start to suffer, it's like Amway, it like trickles down to our downline. What do you think? What do you think about the future of comedy?
Well, I think it's, better than it has been. I think it's a lot more democratized. Like we were saying earlier, I think the days of getting passed at a club and then being a regular at that, I won't say they're dead. I just don't think it matters as much. It used to be like you go on Johnny Carson and your career is set. Now there's no one thing that'll propel you, but in a way that's liberating, because there are people who are TikTok stars who can fill a room. There are people who are more, edgy. There's more Christian comedy. I think there's more silos and divisions. And part of me doesn't like that, but it's also like choose your own adventure if you're the audience.
Also, though, can the TikTok star fill a room and hold their attention is what I want to know.
Right.
Without a video screen and editing. And I mean, I get, like, you have a bag of tricks. Like, I have friends that are ventriloquists or musicians and they have a bag of tricks, but nothing can replace a person who takes a mic on any day of the week, on any time of day, and can fill a room and keep the attention. Like, that's art to me. And I don't know that TikTok will ever, like, how do you compete with the cat who ate the ball of yarn? So I kind of go, there's a lot of new sandboxes, but I pray that live entertainment just continues to flourish, because there's no substitute for that.
No, and I think the pandemic has taught us that people want to be out. They want to interact. They want to spit on each other because they're laughing so much. They want to be in a crowded theater watching Kerri Pomarolli.
There's this thing that I'm sort of on the ground level of, and we should talk when we're off the air. I kicked it over to Ron, but there are these guys in Europe, London, that have these Oculus, the Oculus machines, and they've started these virtual comedy clubs in the Metaverse. It's a real thing, Maddie. It's a real thing. I have like high-powered businessmen. These are the guys that were in on the Bitcoin thing early. I mean, they are legit dudes. And they're like, this is either going to be like the best thing ever or ridiculous. But like, they are having shows and 20,000 people and they built comedy clubs in the Metaverse.
Wow.
crazy? So they're like filming, let's say they would film at your room. I'm saying like, you could do that. Like they're looking for content. You could produce a show in Orange County. They will put it in the metaverse. They will profit share with you.
Yeah.
And maybe 20,000 people come.
Wow.
So let's talk in 12 months and see if that, but these guys are very smart and they're very intuitive in the metaverse world and the Oculus, which is to me is like stupid, but they said that when you're in the Metaverse Comedy Club, you're sitting next to people, you see them, you feel them. It's a live experience, which our kids may just be growing up with that and that would be their normal. But I'm sort of glad to be on the ground level of it. And I just said, I'm going to start telling my
That sounds terrifying, but I'm fascinated. I want to do it.
I know. Well, we shall discuss whenever you want to discuss, but who knows? What if in 3 years it's like a thing?
It might be. Well, you're definitely a thing, Kerri Pomarolli.
Yeah.
For folks out there who want to learn more about you, they want to see you live, where can they go?
Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. No, you can find me anywhere. Kerri, KerriPom. That's my Instagram handle, or kerripom.com, or Facebook, Kerri Pomarolli, or ask Maddie where to find me. But maybe we'll be doing Metaverse comedy together. So we shall see.
We'll be on the Metaverse. So those in and out of the Metaverse, check out Kerri Pomarolli. She's fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.